Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the body of Chapter 5. In this chapter, we're primarily focused on inventory, but we're going to start off by adding a new account to our chart of accounts, and we'll also record a journal entry to show the transfer of funds from our checking account into the new account, which is going to be a money market account, and also transfer into the payroll checking account again. And when we get into the inventory, we're going to set up a new inventory item. We'll record a couple of transactions related to the inventory, including a purchase and a sale. And then we'll also make an inventory adjustment. We'll wrap up by discussing internal controls and reviewing a couple of related reports, the audit trail report and the find transactions report within Sage. So to get started, I have just opened up Sage, and now I got to get into my Bellwether Garden Supply. So I'm going to click on Open an Existing Company, and I want to find Bellwether Garden Supply in the list. If you have multiple Bellwethers, make sure you're grabbing the most recent one. Look at the time and date stamp, and then click OK. Once Bellwether Garden Supply is opened up, to verify that you're in the most recent up-to-date company file, you can go to your Employees and Payrolls tab in the navigation menu, and then down here in the recently used reports, select the payroll check register, click on View, and then what we're going to do here is look for those checks that we entered. You should see checks 1,294 as well as 1,295, 1,286, and 1,297. If you see all four of those checks, then you know that you are in the correct up-to-date company file. And if you scroll down to the bottom of the payroll check register report, you should see the same total that I'm showing here, $37,631.02. And make sure that if your total doesn't match that, make sure your date matches mine in terms of March 1st to March 31st. Don't worry about the year. And also make sure that the four checks that you entered do have their check numbers next to them. If they don't, you can just double click on any one of them to pull it up, and then you can manually type the check number in and save it. So before we get into the inventory topics in Chapter 5, I am going to cover a couple of things. First thing I'm going to take a look at is the help feature inside of the software. So from the file menu here at the top of the page, I'm going to click on help, and then I'm going to select help topics. So here we're seeing the documentation that's stored within the software for how to use it, and we have these different categories, sort of a table of contents over here. We can expand them out to get more detail. We can also keyword search within the help here. So if you have questions about how to enter a certain transaction or how to access a certain feature within the software, this help function is pretty helpful. However, if you run into a situation where you have like a technical glitch, like that script error that we saw, or sometimes when we get later in the class, there might be errors where we close the books out and the post-closing trial balance isn't in balance, the debits and the credits aren't matching. What happens with that is maybe the retained earnings account doesn't have the net income posted to it like it should. It's a software glitch. It shouldn't happen, but it sometimes does with students. And when we run into those technical glitches, you're not going to find much assistance within this help documentation for it. So in the past, what I would do in those situations is I would get on Google and I would basically search user forums and look at other people that had similar problems and how they were able to get around them. I would sometimes end up on Sage's official forums, but otherwise sometimes on other random forums. Nowadays, though, instead of doing that, what I typically do in a situation like this is I would get into ChatGPT. And I asked ChatGPT a question here. I said, do you have documentation for Sage 2022 within your training? And it says that it's familiar with the documentation for Sage 50 2022, but it doesn't have access to it directly because it's copyrighted. However, what I usually would do in those kinds of situations with technical glitches is I would get in the chat bot and I would specifically describe the error message that I'm seeing, verbatim, any words that come from that error message. I'd try to make sure I match them exactly. And I would specifically ask the chat bot to search forums. And that seems to be much more efficient of a way to find the answers to technical glitches is using tools like this. Getting back to the content in chapter 5, we are going to make a change to the company's chart of accounts now, and this is described on page 158 of our book. There are many ways to get to the chart of accounts within Sage. One way is from the drop-down menu here, select Maintain, and then find Chart of Accounts there. So when we add a new account to the chart of accounts, we're going to be specifying 3 pieces of information. We're going to put in the account ID. This is going to be the account number. The description is going to be the account name, and then finally the account type is the category that the account belongs to. And the account type is really important because that determines which financial statement the account is going to appear upon. So we have a bunch of pre-filled choices here. We got to be really careful to make sure that we select the correct account type. The default account type is cash, and what I see in later chapters when we actually set up the entire chart of accounts that many of my students accidentally select cash for accounts that they didn't intend to. So just be very careful with that. All right, so the account that we're creating right now is going to be a money market fund. So it's an asset account. So if we look at the account ID drop down here, you're going to see that this company is using 5-digit account numbers, and all of the accounts that are in the 10,000 range are going to be all different asset accounts. You scroll down, we've got 20,000s for our liabilities, 30,000 for equity, 40,000 for revenues, and 50,000s for cost of goods sold related accounts. And it looks like sort of a combination here of 50,000, 60,000, 70,000s and on for our expense accounts. So they're using a typical numbering system with the 10,000s for assets, 20,000s for liabilities, and so on. So sometimes it's helpful to know that because when you look at account numbers, that gives you insight as to the account type. And the one that we're going to be entering is going to have an account number of 10,500. So I'm going to enter that. And then the account name, which I put in for the description field, is going to be Money Market Fund. And then the account type, the default is cash, and actually this is going to fall into that category of assets, but be careful with that whenever you're specifying a new account. Make sure that the account type makes sense for this account. And to save this money market fund account to our system, we're going to click Save, and now it's in the system. So now I'm going to close out of this window, and if I want to see that it's in the system, I can run a report that shows all of our chart of accounts. So from the reports and forms drop down, I'm going to select general ledger as my category, and then chart of accounts. I'm going to double click on that particular report, and here is that new account number 10,500 that I just created. So it's in there. So I'm going to close that out. Another topic that's briefly mentioned in chapter 5 before we get into the inventory related topics is taking a look at a budgeted income statement within the software. And to look at our budgeted income statement, we're going to click on reports and forms, and then we are going to select financial statements. And the budgeted income statement is labeled standard income / budget, so I'll double click on that report. It's asking me for the period of time to run the report on, and I am just going to roll with the default there and click OK. So this is currently looking at a 3-month period, the first quarter of the year, and here we have all of the revenue accounts in the system. If we look at these column headers, it says the current month actual, next current month budget, and then next current month variance. So the difference between actual and budgeted amounts is the variance. If we scroll down, we see the same thing for our cost of goods sold and gross profit, as well as our expenses and our net income. We also see the same kind of information for year to date, as well as year to date budget and year to date variance. As far as interactivity within this report, only the actual amounts are interactive. So when I mouse over those amounts in those columns, you can see that the zoom magnifying lens pops up, and then I could zoom in for more details on the ledger for that particular account if I wanted to. So moving on in the book, it looks like the next thing that we're going to do is record a transaction that's described on page 162. And it looks like we're transferring money from our regular checking account into our money market fund, as well as our payroll checking account. So it's going to be a compound journal entry. So I'm going to close out of this report. And then I am going to go to the task list and find general journal entry. So the date of this transaction per the book is March 15th. Click on the calendar, find the 15th. Once again, don't worry about the year. For the reference, I'm going to type in the word transfer. And then this is going to be a compound entry. We're transferring into both the money market fund and the payroll checking account. So those are both assets and they're both increasing. So they're both going to be debited. So I'm going to find those accounts here. So from the magnifying lens, I find money market, and then I go to the next line and find the payroll checking. And it says per the book, we're transferring 4,500 into money market, 1,000 into payroll checking, and this is all coming from the regular checking account. And since it's an asset and we're transferring from it, it's decreasing, it needs to be credited, and we're transferring the total amount, which would be 5,500 from that account. And then once I click off that 5,500, I'll notice the out of balance is showing 0, debits equal credits, and now I'm ready to save this transaction. And once I click on that save button, the screen clears, and now I can close out of the general journal entry window. So now we're going to transition to the inventory related topics from the chapter. And the first thing we're going to do is set up a new inventory item. So to do that, from the navigational menu, I'm going to select inventory and services. And then we have a bunch of inventory related tasks here, as well as a workflow related to inventory. For right now, I'm going to select inventory items and then select new inventory item. So at the top of the page, we have item ID. This is essentially the SKU number for the item. And the item that we're going to be entering is a feeder, a bird feeder for Orioles. And it looks like the SKU number is AVRY-10300. So then I'm going to move down to description. This is going to be where we type in the name of the item, which is going to be Oriole feeder. So then next we have this item class, and this is where we specify the different inventory item types. For right now, we're going to select stock item, and you can see from that drop down menu for item class that there are several different item types that we could specify. Let me talk about these briefly. So the Oriole feeder is going to be set up as stock item. And a stock item is a physical product that the business buys and sells that we can use to track for quantity on hand and inventory value. Whereas a master stock item is a template that we can use to group similar stock items, like different sizes or colors of the same product. A non-stock item would be a product that you purchase or sell but you don't keep in inventory, such as a special order item or a drop shipment. Description only is used when you just want a line of text on the invoice or quote without affecting quantities or accounts. Service, that's for services the company sells, such as consulting or repairs, that's not tracked for quantity. Labor, that's used to track labor costs that might be part of a job or project but not tied to physical inventory. Assembly is used when we combine multiple component items into a finished good, so think manufacturing there. Activity item, typically used in job costing to track times, tasks, or project activities. A charge item is used for extra fees or add-ons such as delivery or setup charges. Each of these types tells Sage how to handle the item in both the accounting and reporting, so it's important to choose the right one when you create a new inventory record. So the next thing we're going to do for this Oriole feeder is we're going to set up the price of it. Now by price, we're talking selling price, and if I find this price level 1 and I click on the arrow next to it, you can see that you can set up to 10 different price levels. So the company could charge different prices to different types of customers, like retail, wholesale, contract accounts. Most small businesses only use one or two for an item, but the extra levels are there for flexibility. And what we're doing is just setting one of them, price level one. We're going to set it for this Oriole feeder at $15 each. So type in the 15, click OK. Next thing we're going to do for this field that's labeled last unit cost, we're going to type in a specific amount, $7 even there. And what that is basically doing is auto-filling information when we purchase this Oriole feeder. It's going to autofill the unit cost at $7. If the unit cost from our supplier ends up being different than $7, we can always change that on that transaction entry screen. But for right now, we're going to set that up at 7. And then for cost method, you can see if we click on the drop down that Sage can use FIFO, LIFO, or a weighted average. We're going to keep that at FIFO. So here we're going to map this inventory item to several different accounts that relate to it. And here's a common mistake. It says that the sales account that's going to be associated with this Oriole feeder is going to be 40,000-AV for aviary. And so a lot of students accidentally leave this at 40,000, but if I click on this and scroll down a little bit, I see that 40,000 is like the control account for all the sales revenue, and then we have specific subsidiary accounts, and we're going to select this 40,000-AV. For the general ledger inventory account associated with the Oriole feeder, we're just going to keep it at 12,000, which is our control account for inventory. And then for the general ledger cost of goods sold account, the default's 50,000. We are going to change that to 50,000-AV. For the item tax type, if I click on the magnifying lens there, I can see I've got different codes representing whether the item is typically taxable or not. We're going to leave it as taxable, so a code of 1. If the item had a UPC, a barcode number, we could type that number in here, but we don't have one for this Oriole feeder, so we'll leave that blank. For inventory reporting purposes, we're going to select this category for item type as supply. To help us locate inventory, we're going to indicate where it's typically stored at on the shelves, and it's going to be aisle 1. The next choice is stocking U/M. That stands for unit of measure. That's the base unit in which you track and store the item inventory, such as are you keeping track of them individually? Do they come by the dozen, and so on? And for this one, we're going to select each. So we're keeping track of each individual Oriole feeder. Sometimes it's important that we would specify a weight in here, especially if we're going to be shipping. That would be helpful, but we're just going to leave that blank for now. Next, we're going to specify the minimum stock for the item at 6. And this is the lowest quantity we want to have on hand before it's considered to be too low. The system won't stop you from selling below that level, but it acts as a warning point. The software uses it in reports like the inventory reorder report to flag items that have fallen below that minimum. And then the reorder quantity, we're also going to specify that at 6. And this tells Sage how many units you typically reorder when stock gets low. And then finally, we're going to specify the preferred vendor for this item, and we're going to select from one of the existing vendors, De Julia wholesale suppliers. And that's all we need to do on this inventory item sheet here. If you want to take a quick look, make sure that all of your details match up, especially price and unit cost and the mapping of the accounts. That's going to be key. And when you're all done, hit save. So now I'm going to close out of this window, and we're going to record a couple of transactions related to these Oriole feeders now. So to get started here, I'm going to click on the vendors and purchases area of Sage. And usually inventory works through a workflow where you first record a purchase order, and then that just indicates that you've ordered the goods from your supplier, but you haven't received them yet, so it's non-posting. It doesn't create an entry that increases inventory, increases accounts payable because you haven't received the items yet. Once you have received the items, you would compare them against the order, and at that point, once you've received those items, you would create an entry that impacted your accounts payable or inventory, and you do that through a bill. And then finally, once you've paid off that accounts payable, you'd go to pay bills. We are skipping right to the bill here though, so we're going to not follow the typical workflow. We're going to go right to enter bills and then select new bill. And we are recording the purchase of 6 Oreo feeders from De Julia wholesale suppliers, and we're going to start off here by selecting them in the vendor ID. The date of this transaction per the book is March 17th. We do have an invoice number. It's 55,522. It looks like there are already purchase orders in the system related to this vendor, but we're not going to be connecting to any of those. We're going to click on the tab that says Apply to Purchases. On this screen, we're going to specify the item that we're purchasing, which is going to be that Oreo feeder. It has a SKU number of AVRY 10,300, and if I start typing that in, I should be able to find it, and there it is, Oreo feeder. Purchasing a quantity of 6, we'll type that in for quantity, and then once we selected that Oreo feeder, the general ledger account number shows 12,000, which is our inventory. I can specify or see that if I click on this magnifying lens and verify it. And then that unit price, we put in that last unit cost of 7, so that autofilled. That does match the detail from the book. We should see a total of $42 here, so make sure you see that. And once you do, we can save the transaction. Before I do that though, I am going to take a quick look at the general journal entry. So I click on that journal button and I can see, okay, I'm buying inventory. So I'm seeing an increase to my inventory account through a debit. It's an asset, increases on the debit side. And I'm also seeing an increase to my accounts payable. That's a liability account, so it increases on its credit side. So the journal entry makes sense. When I connect it to my prior accounting knowledge, I'm going to close that window out, and now I'm going to save the transaction. The screen clears, and now I'm going to close out that window. So now we're going to record a sales transaction. We're going to sell some of these Oreo feeders, and we're selling them on account, on credit. So to do that, I'm going to go to customers and sales, and we're going to go right into a sales invoice, and then new sales invoice. So the customer that we're selling to is Henton Park. They're already in the system, so for the customer ID, I should be able to find them. Henton, there they are. The details of this sale are on page 174 of the book. We're selling 3 of the feeders to Henton for $15 each plus sales tax. So it looks like there are sales orders in the system already with Henton, but we're not relating to any of those with this transaction. So I'm going to click on the Apply to Sales tab, and then I'm going to find the item here. This is that Oreo feeder. So if I type in that SKU number again, which is AVRY 10,300, I should be able to quickly find that. And there it is, Oreo feeder. We're selling a quantity of 3, so type in 3 in the quantity box, and then I can see as of March 1st, it's giving me an error that I don't have enough inventory. Well, that's because that purchase that we just recorded was on March 17th, and I didn't go in and change the date of this invoice yet. So I need to do that, March 17th also. And now that quantity should be sufficient because we just bought several of them. We bought 6 of them, so should we be able to sell 3 of them now? Alright, so I put in the quantity of 3, the system auto-populated with a price of 15, we're seeing $45 there, and after the sales tax, you see the same total as I have here, $48.15. Normally we'd enter an invoice number here as well, but the text doesn't provide us with one, so I'm going to skip over it for right now. If we wanted to take a look at the journal entry here, we could by clicking the journal button, but anytime we're on a sales invoice, we're going to see an increase to our accounts receivable, we're going to see an increase to revenue, and if we're selling inventory or product, we're going to see an increase to cost of goods sold and a decrease to inventory. For right now though, I'm just going to save the transaction. This screen clears out and I'm going to close it out. So the next topic in the book is talking about inventory adjustments. Sometimes it's necessary to adjust the quantity of inventory due to faulty records. Maybe you've got some spoilage, you've got some theft, so you might need to make an adjustment that reduces your quantity of inventory. And to do that within the system here, in the navigational menu, we're going to select Inventory and Services, and then we're going to select Inventory Adjustments button. So we are going to record an adjustment related to a birdhouse kit. This is described on page 177 of the book, so we got to find the item. It is AVRY-10100, which is a birdhouse kit. There it is. Looks like the system, if I look at that again, was showing a quantity of 30. But on screen right now it shows a quantity of -36, and I think that's probably because of the date that is used here by default, and it says to specify March 15th. Yeah, so there must have been some transactions between March 1st and March 15th in the sample company. So now we're seeing a quantity of 30 there. And here where it says to adjust quantity by, we're reducing the quantity by 2. So we have to type in -2 there. And you can see here the quantity on hand previously was 30. After we subtracted 2, the new quantity would be 28. And then we are going to type in a little description of why we're making the adjustment. And we'll type the word damage there. So there is no journal entry button here, but there is a journal entry behind the scenes of this screen. We're specifying which account should be charged for this adjustment. So we're charging to a 50,000 AV, which is a cost of goods sold account, and then the other part of it, so that would be debited because we're increasing cost of goods sold for this shrinkage here, and then the other account would be the inventory account itself is decreasing because we had some lost product due to damage. So to post this transaction, I'm going to click Save. The screen clears out and we're going to close it out. The text talks about security and internal control within Sage, starting on page 178, going through, looks like 186. So I think that would be a good section for you to read through a little bit, but I'm going to talk about it also. So Sage has the ability to, if you have the administrator access, to set up different user accounts within the software, and you can set up their usernames and their passwords, and you can specify the access that they have to different areas within the Sage, and you can control what access they have and limit it if you needed to. Controlling user access in general ledger accounting software is an important part of internal controls. By limiting each employee's access to only the areas they need, like payroll, inventory, or general ledger, you reduce the risk of errors, fraud, or unauthorized changes to financial data. So we're not actually going to be doing that within the software, but if you wanted to see where that's at, it's under Maintain, and then Users, and then Set up User Security. We can see here we're on a screen with a user list for this company file. I could click New User. I could give them a username and a password, and then I could also edit their user rights and so on. So once again, that's a key internal control. It lets you separate duties and prevent unauthorized changes. On a related note, I want to take a look at an important report within Sage. So if I click on the Reports and Forms drop down, and then I select the category of company, I can find 2 reports here that we're going to take a look at. We're going to take a look at first the Audit Trail report, so I'll double click on that. The Audit Trail report records every transaction entered, changed, or deleted, along with the user who did it and when. It's an important internal control tool because it provides accountability and helps detect errors or unauthorized activity. By default, the report's going to just report on activity from the current system date. If you need to change the date range there, you can click on Options, and then you got your date choices up here. And then you can see here that I didn't have any users set up in my company, so it shows not available. But if we had different users set up, it would specify the user. You can see that it shows time and date stamps and then what occurred within the company file. So I'll close out of the audit trail report, and now I'm going to click on the find transactions report, which is also within the company reports category. Double click on that. The find transactions report lets you quickly locate specific transactions based on criteria like account, amount, date, customer, vendor. It's a great internal control and troubleshooting tool because it helps you trace activity and verify entries throughout the system. And you might be wondering, when I ran this report, why does it show no data? Well, it's because it's defaulting to today's system date, which is October 5th, but we were entering transactions during March. And in your company, it would be March of 2022. Mine is March of 2019. So to find some of the transactions, I click on Options. And here I can change the date range. I can also specify filters if I wanted to. So since we just entered a transaction where we sold product to Henton Park Apartments, I think it was, I'm going to click on this filter for customer or vendor or employee ID, and I'm going to select customer, and then I'm going to find that particular customer, Henton, and then I'm going to click OK. And then it didn't find anything because it's still defaulting to the same date range, so I have to go back in there and remember to do that as well. So Henton, that filter's still in there, and then I'm just going to click on all to show all the transactions in the system related to Henton, and that was too wide of a net there. There's a lot of them, so maybe I'm going to go back in the book and look at the date of that transaction a moment. Looks like it was March 17th. So I am going to click Options there and specify that. Oops, March 17th. And once again, yours might be showing different years, but that's okay. Just use 2022 on yours. I'm going to go with 19 on mine. And there is that sales invoice. So you can see it can be a way to quickly find transactions. You can filter by amount, by customer, by vendor, and so on. And the report is interactive, so if I wanted to look at more detail related to that transaction, I can just double click on the amount and it will pull up the transaction entry screen that we used earlier. That makes it to the end of chapter 5 here. So now it's your turn in the exercises. You're going to, looks like in exercise 5.1, you're going to be recording 2 transactions. The first one's going to be a transfer from the regular checking account into the payroll checking account. So that's going to be in the general journal. And then next you're going to be recording the purchase of 2 more Oriole feeders from DeHulia Wholesale Suppliers, and that is going to be a bill that you're entering into the system. And then in exercise 5.2, it looks like you're just running a report. It's going to be your general ledger trial balance. So when you do that, make sure that you match up with the check figures on page 189 of the book. And if you don't, try to figure it out. Remember that that trial balance is going to be cumulative of all the activity that we've done in the first 5 chapters. So if you've been matching up at the end of each chapter, it should just come from chapter 5, but if not, it could come from prior chapters. And if you need help, please reach out.